episode 100! And it's high time for the big review you've all been waiting for. Let's close out this momentous milestone by playing Metroid.
Yes!
Other! No! And I'm gonna bake some cookies. Well, in that case. After 3 long years of waiting since Metroid Prime 3 showed us all what Metroid could do on the Wii, Metroid Other M could not come any faster. I was legitimately excited for this. Friends of mine in high school also shared in the excitement, huddling around library monitors and sharing headsets to watch the latest trailers. And why shouldn't we have been excited? This new game had a ton of potential, being developed by Team Ninja while still being directed, written, and produced by Yoshio Sakamoto himself. Maybe because trusting gaming's oldest and greatest female icon to the boob jiggle physics people wasn't such a good idea? Sure, they've pretty much never made a game not called Ninja Gaiden or Dead or Alive, but considering how Nintendo was so reluctant to develop their own new 2D or even 3D Metroid, then allowing a fresh set of eyes from talented outsourced developers sounded just like what the series needed for a big break. It worked with Retro Studios. Or it might just accidentally create an inexcusably unfathomable disappointment that will immediately kill any interest left in the series by Nintendo for another 7 years, unless you count this Trojan horse trash, by turning the entire Metroid fandom against itself, creating so much irreparable damage that the series will still struggle to reclaim its reputation over a decade later. I was very excited for this game. I was very upset when it got delayed, and I honestly had a lot of fun with it. And I believe that given the right mindset, anyone can also have a great time with this game. I loathe this game. The horrific slander against the entire Metroid series is unforgivable. It spits in the face of canon, it spits in the face of lore, and worst of all, it spits in the face of Samus and everything else you've ever loved about this series. It's not that bad under the right light. Light it however you want, you're still spotlighting its turd. This game wasn't just the final nail in the coffin for Metroid, it also crushed our hopes of ever seeing the fabled Project Dread. Let's have an open mind and barbecue this filthy swine! Now I know this is gonna sound weird, but stay with me now. This game is half third person and half first person. You see, Team Ninja wanted to do some new style of 3D Metroid, but without leaning too heavily on the existing 2D or 3D formulas. So instead you hold the Wiimote sideways like an NES controller when you want to run around in third person, and point it at the screen like in Prime to enter first person. And yes, it's every bit as awkward as that sounds. Yeah, so Samus can now run around and perform all sorts of cool new action-y moves while in third person, but the auto-targeting's a little wonky and you can't shoot missiles in this mode at all. So you gotta flip the controller towards the screen quickly mid-fight, wait for it to register and calibrate, and then start firing in first-person mode, which you can't move during, by the way, considering the nunchuck would have made this gimmick impossible. They made sure to avoid the nunchuck to prevent players from taking the easy way out and asphyxiating themselves. Yeah, the point at the screen to shoot missiles thing is kinda slow and annoying, but the third-person action gameplay is surprisingly well done, and it's because of this game that future titles would be inspired to have Samus perform counters and other flashy moves. Well, one of those new moves died with this game, and for good reason. Thinking of other action games, Samus needed a fair way to dodge third-person projectiles and melee attacks while only relying on the simple D-pad. So to compensate, she was given a Bayonetta Witch Time style invincible dodge called the Sense Move. Yeah, so you can basically dodge almost anything in the game just by mashing the D-pad back and forth, which at the right time, during a very favorable window, will make Samus do a slow-mo dodge, even charge up an attack, and come out aiming at the enemy unscathed. She can even repeatedly spam this and live in the magical iframe dimension, completely impervious to attacks if you wanna. I get why they had to add this, but it just causes more problems than it fixes. Instead of having a dedicated button for dodges, Samus will weirdly stutter in place while waiting for a move to dodge, and making the window for dodging disgustingly wide only encourages its abuse further. We did actually get some new items in this game, and I rather like them. We have the energy part, which later returned in Metroid Dread, the diffusion beam similar to the wall-penetrating missiles from Fusion, and the Excel Charge, speeding up Samus's charge times for beams and super missiles, and honestly, it might just be the best forgotten feature of this game. Oh, you want to hear some bad stuff? Look at the length of this video. I'd say I could keep you here all day, but it looks like I just might! Yeah, so brace yourself. There are no health or ammo pickups from downed enemies in the game. Instead, you'll need to conserve your strength until you make it to the next navigation room to heal and restock. It's either that or use the new concentration ability, where at low HP, you can point the Wiimote up and let Samus stand in place to regain some HP and missiles. You starting to get the picture that this isn't really a Metroid game, but instead a quirky action game? So even if Samus does take lethal damage, she'll instead flash red and be left with 1 HP, giving you the chance to try and heal. But considering the enemies don't drop anything, even if you do kill them, it's best to just ignore them and keep progressing to the next navigation room. You know, it's a bad mechanic when it discourages people from playing the game. So like I mentioned, the game's navigation rooms are scattered all over the map, but the map itself is super linear, taking heavy inspiration from Fusion's sector-based levels, but amplifying the hand-holding and lack of exploration options to an unbearable degree. And the most egregious part of the gameplay is how you actually go about acquiring your upgrades. Ugh. So this is half a story thing and half a gameplay thing. Early on, Samus meets up with Adam Malkovich, who demands that she strictly obey his commands for the entirety of the mission. Even though she's an independent bounty hunter and he has absolutely no jurisdiction over her whatsoever other than his own personal animosity for her for unjustifiably petty reasons. But anyway, Adam demands that Samus only use the upgrades he explicitly allows her to use from her arsenal she's already got equipped from Super Metroid. So they're kind of trying to find a creative reason as to why Samus has to reacquire all the upgrades she already has from the last game without basically bonking her upside the head at the beginning of every game. So this is better than just not addressing it at all, right? No! God, no! Besides, there was a perfectly reasonable explanation at the beginning of the game as Samus was hospitalized after the events of Super. Just say that wiped her slate clean and nobody would have cared. But now you're telling me that the Samus Aran is suddenly gonna curl up like an obedient puppy and let this negligent and downright abusive psychopath boss her around? But to be fair, some of her power-ups would cause some serious damage to the ship, like her power bombs, and this is Adam's reasoning for asserting his dominance over her actions. Okay, fine, power bombs I get, but what about her freaking space jump? Her grapple beam, or even her Varia suit? These things do absolutely no harm to the ship or to anyone else, but they only allow Samus to explore further and reach new places. But some literally serve no other purpose than to keep her alive! There's a point where Adam commands Samus into a molten hot sector and forces her to run across it unprotected multiple times. And it's not until she's about to die from heat exhaustion after literally burning alive for minutes on end that this sociopath tells her that the Varia suit is finally authorized and she's allowed to save her own life. It's ridiculous and unacceptably out of character for Samus, regardless of how badly the story wants to justify this incredibly foolish act of blind obedience. Yeah, the game's got a lot of bits like this, where it feels more like the story was made first and foremost, and the game parts just kind of exist just to splice all the cutscenes together. There's a disturbing amount of unskippable segments, where you're brought to a slow over-the-shoulder view, where Samus can only mosey on forward at the speed of a narcoleptic gerbil, until she finally reaches the end of the hallway or whatever. It happens so often, it's maddening. Like, run, Samus! Oh man, there's even this one bit where she's chasing after a frightened person she's trying to save, but you're forced to slowly stomp your way over to them like the Terminator, instead of, you know, acting like you're gonna save them. And then there's all those parts where the game throws the emergency brakes on because Samus notices something. So the game suddenly goes into first person, making you point all around the screen as Samus looks all over for that one particular thing that she wants you to notice. Sweet mother, I spent hours on one of these segments. No kidding. And I had just beaten a boss too. And since I was locked into this stupid first person thing, I couldn't save. I had to drop everything after pointing at literally everything I could find in 360 degrees and look it up online. And what the game wanted me to see absolutely pissed me off. There's a nondescript little blotch of green goo in the grass way behind you. You were supposed to straight up look in the opposite direction of where they faced you to notice something and look at the green amidst the green! And you know the worst part about the gameplay? It was published? No, the worst part is that Samus in gameplay is this wicked cool intergalactic action hero flipping around and performing all sorts of cinematic alien takedowns. However, the story kicks in and suddenly she's transformed into this quiet and dangerously submissive, emotionless, monologuing, timid weakling. There's a lot to unpack there. How about we just cut to the whatever. Okay, so this is probably the best looking game on the Wii. The cinematics alone are so phenomenal for the system that it really does blow everything else out of the water. But this is undeniably the worst suit design I have ever seen. It's lost all of its character in favor of oversimplifying it. It's even uglier than that one time Samus dressed like a clown in Fusion. That stupid suit doesn't even look different when it gets its Varia and Gravity suit upgrades. It just kind of gets a light little purple haze around it for gravity when you're using it, and that's it. You wear this hideously plain Jane Billiards cosplay for the entire game. And the classic returning enemy and boss designs? All suck. Like a lot. Nightmare looks like a puny toaster with arms and a slimy Thomas the Tank Engine face. Space Pirates look like cut Star Trek costumes from the 60s. And Ridley looks like a duck on steroids. And why does Samus keep taking off her suit? It seems like Team Ninja came up with this digital power suit idea just so she can randomly strip down to her jumpsuit every once in a while for some shameless male gaze shots. Well, yeah, these are the dead or alive pervs. I didn't ask to see that perfectly sculpted space booty. I just wanted to play a Metroid game. I'm honestly shocked her boobs weren't flopping around in a space bikini, all things considered. Just like most video game movies, this game's just informed enough to reference things, but completely tone deaf in how to show them. Speaking of things game movies screw up. We're finally here. This game's obviously very cinematic and is a huge departure to the traditional Metroid games because of its focus on the story. It's a shame that the story itself might just be the most sloppily written story I've ever heard. And I absolutely don't care about talking spoilers, as I certainly don't recommend you waste any more of your valuable hours of your short life on this miserable floating rock in space than you already have on this game. So just like how every single excruciating cutscene is unskippable, so is this entire segment. So we open with a cinematic retelling of the ending of Super Metroid, with Samus defeating Mother Brain with the absorbed power given to her by the obliterated last Metroid. However, this time we get it all with Samus's new monologuing, mumbling on about the baby. Get used to it now, Samus is gonna have a bizarre character shift for this entire game. Samus will continually reflect on the baby throughout the whole game as if she lost her child or something, when before she only ever referred to it as the larva. This game is absolutely overflowing with forced motherly allusions like this to change Samus's character. The game's initials are M.O.M. for crying out loud. So after she recovers in a Galactic Federation hospital and reports on her successful eradication of the Metroid species, Samus begins aimlessly flying around and picks up a baby's cry distress signal coming from the bottle ship. I told you, and it only gets worse. After landing, Samus quickly meets up with the Galactic Federation's 7th Platoon led by her old commanding officer, Adam Malkovich. Well, considering how this game forced its way between Super and Fusion, and Adam's an AI in Fusion because he's caught a small case of the death, I gotta wager a guess that this dude's gonna die. The game makes darn sure that you see each of these team members and learn all of their names before anything happens. It's like somebody forcing you to read their character bio pages before they even let you read the script. Theirs doesn't matter, not important, inconsequential, and might as well not even be here. Oh right, and there's this guy.
Remember me?
Nope, and I've played every Metroid game. I've even read the manga and some of those other side stories. I even read the manuals, dude. You're not special either. Remember Me here is actually a new character, just to frustrate longtime players and make new players feel left out of the loop. His name's Anthony, for the record. Yeah, I'ma stick with you not special. So Adam refuses to tell Samus why they're on the bottle ship, and instead of just shrugging and giving this reclusive jerk the space deuces he deserves and pissing off, Samus decides to follow him around like an abused puppy to help the platoon. And that's when Adam's superiority complex kicks in, and he tells Samus that she's not even allowed to take a piss without his express permission. And for reasons completely contrary to her character, she agrees. Because we get flashbacks here and repeatedly throughout the story, attempting to embellish on Samus and Adam's relationship over the years. Samus is depicted as a troublesome, angsty contrarian, continually disapproving of Adam's authority, culminating in an event where she ultimately second-guesses his decision to effectively let his own brother die, rather than give her the chance to try and save him. So she gets so upset with him, she storms off to live as a bounty hunter instead? Okay, so aside from that being completely retconning her former relationship with the guy, where it was Adam who convinced Samus to go because the Federation was holding her back, now she's playing it off like a problem wimpy child?
Why?
The best excuse I've ever heard for this was that Samus was retconned from being this tough intergalactic warrior and turned into a timid little girl with daddy issues because that better fits the Japanese stereotype for an attractive woman. She's submissive without question, portrayed as weak and unsure of herself, and is constantly looking for a man's guidance.
I hate that!
I didn't say it was an acceptable reason, I just said it was the most likely, considering this game was written by a Japanese man for Japanese boys, who, I might remind you, questioned why the West even liked Samus at all beforehand.
Even if it was excusable to try and make a character more attractive to your audience and wasn't blatantly sexist and objectifying this main character, it's incredible how strongly it ended up having the opposite effect.
They even retconned, or at the very least undermined, Samus's backstory as being raised by the Chozo to instead being raised by Adam at the Federation, supposedly where he took the role of a disapproving father figure for her obstinate adolescence. Also, Samus claims that taking orders from Adam feels exhilarating, when she blatantly said the opposite in Metroid Fusion. She also flat out says that she's never worked with Federation troops like this before, even though she just did in Prime 3, the most recent game at the time. It's like it can't even get its own story straight.
We're already getting off track.
Right, so Samus encounters this weird little gremlin thing eating a snack after midnight, eventually hatching its tiny body like a cocoon to become a large, awkward, teenage, feathery lizard man, and ultimately hatched from that body again to reach its Super Saiyan final form, Ridley.
So I guess Ridley's a species now and not a one-off mad scientist space pirate experiment gone wild, and he evolves like a Pokemon, and as a duckbill. Did I miss something else here?
Yes, actually. Supposedly the creepy scientist from the beginning who gave Samus' suit a good polish was actually scrubbing for valuable DNA to resurrect many of the creatures Samus encountered on her mission to Zebes in Super Metroid. Adjusts glasses.
But she was paid to exterminate the Metroids and all that other stuff by the Federation! You're telling me they paid the most powerful bounty hunter in the galaxy to perform planet-wide genocide, all just to scrape the scraps of gooey flesh from her suit afterward and clone an army of all those creatures anyway?
Yes.
That's the stupidest!
Apparently, Samus and company discovered that the entire bottle ship was actually just a massive bioweapons lab posing as a research facility.
Oh, come on now, that's just the plot from Fusion.
Yep.
Wait, you're serious?
Yes, this game is Metroid Fusion. Canonically before Metroid Fusion, but released way after Fusion.
It's so dumb, I feel like I'm gonna give myself a brain aneurysm.
Getting back to the Ridley subplot, because honestly that's all it really is, just a subplot.
This entire game's just a tangled web of unrelated subplots.
Anyway, sure, Ridley's appearance alone was enough to give pause to even the most diehard fans, even with all the bass-backward reasoning behind it. But the real outrage came from Samus's reaction to seeing him, as he just kinda stands in front of her and roars a lot, patiently waiting for her scene to finish.
Oh my god, I hate this so much.
Samus has a panic attack, akin to a PTSD reaction to seeing Purple Space Dragon alive. And just in case you didn't pick up on the intense subtlety, she's even physically replaced with a little girl version of herself just to hammer it home that she's a scared, poor, defenseless little girl.
This makes what, like the 7th time she's fought Ridley by this point so far? Aside from the fact that she never once even batted an eye at this guy appearing before, she straight up obliterated him in Super. She's not a traumatized little girl. She's a grown woman who has conquered her fears and overcome the most imposing of challenges thrown her way.
To the game's credit, the last time she fought Ridley was his canonical death in Super, so him appearing at all would at the very least be surprising.
That doesn't justify the sobbing toddler act at all. Even in the Metroid Zero Mission manga, the first actual hint of Samus having PTSD from Ridley's attack on her home as a child, she powerfully overcomes her own weakness and even mocks Ridley as she crushes him.
To make matters worse, Samus doesn't even get to kill him in this game. He's killed off screen by some mysterious force and cringily left in the same pose he's found frozen in Metroid Fusion. As if anybody needed that explained.
You build up this absurd return of Samus's arch nemesis only to give her some sissy reaction and kill him off screen?
I'm getting ahead of myself, where was I?
It's hard to tell what this game told in this mismatched order, jumping all over the place with this and that and the flashbacks and bouncing between plot threads and...
So we gotta talk about the Galactic Federation Squad's side plot, because this is an absolute train wreck.
Oh god, this.
So while Adam manages the group from the safety of a control room, it soon becomes clear that one of the Federation troopers is secretly an undercover agent in disguise, silently assassinating the others one by one.
And Adam is monitoring everyone on a viewer like an Among Us live stream, and he still can't figure out who the killer is.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, nobody does.
They straight up out this plot thread. No kidding, they built it up for half of the freaking game and literally forgot to finish the story.
This secret killer was played off like it was gonna be this huge mystery, going through the effort of teaching us all the Federation guys' names and whatnot, even trying to develop Samus and Anthony's relationship for a bit, for an impending reveal, but there's no payoff. I'm not kidding, it literally just stops.
Samus even makes it clear in her drowning monologues that she's going to be casually referring to this backstabbing murderer killing off her allies as the Deleter. I can't even say it with a straight face.
Forgetting about the Deleter is like if Sigourney Weaver forgot there was an alien on the ship killing all of her friends in Alien. Imagine she's the only one left and just kind of makes a sandwich, plays some solitaire, and goes to sleep. The end.
The Deleter was even a boss, for crying out loud. So because fans couldn't bear this incomplete plot thread, they eventually determined that the Deleter had to have been the generic McShooty-Shoot number 3, James Pierce.
Thing is, even James was found killed off screen, so it's not like it means very much.
So why are we spending so much time talking about it? I don't know, ask the game!
Back to the story. Remember that one person we mentioned earlier that Samus tries to save while chasing her down as fast as a starfish in a hamster wheel? Well, she's pretty important. So much so that I honestly blame her inclusion for clouding the writing of this game to the extent that the Deleter plot thread could be forgotten altogether. The woman claims to be Madeline Bergman, the head of the bioweapons project on the bottle ship, responsible for sending out the distress signal. But I'm not even gonna beat around the bush. That's a lie. Eventually, Samus discovers another woman claiming to be Madeline Bergman, and that the first one she met was actually an android AI gone rogue, hell-bent on using her weird evolving psychokinetic superpowers to control all of the living bioweapons on the bottle ship and kill people, I guess.
Yeah, her plan kind of falls apart there considering how they're on a spaceship in the middle of nowhere, but whatever.
Regardless, Samus learns that the goal of this illegal bioweapons lab was to artificially create Metroids immune to their only weakness, ice. And that Adam was secretly behind, get this, Project Metroid Warriors, which aimed to create this invincible army of killing machines, but had no idea about the Deleter. So the same conspiratorial faction of the Galactic Federation sent a group led by one of their own in on the job, but also an assassin to discreetly kill everyone on the team, and neither knew about each other.
Are you seriously still following this nonsense?
So Samus finds where the Metroids are being stored, in a secret sector just like it was or rather, well, it will be next time. But before she can enter and exterminate them all, she's shot in the back by Adam.
When I first played this, I was like, oh man, Adam's the Deleter. Guess it makes sense considering how he's such a negligent psychopath towards Samus and completely oblivious to his own crewmates disappearing one by one.
Yeah, no, that's too clever for this game.
So he just shoots Samus in the back, disabling her suit right in front of a real living Metroid, nearly killing her in the process and waiting until the last possible moment to freeze it and save her? I swear this only happens so we can see Samus without her suit again. Adam claims that the infant Metroids are still young enough to be frozen, and he incapacitated Samus from stopping him from going into the hidden sector alone to kill the Metroids himself, because apparently he's supposed to be the good guy now. After locking himself in, Samus gives him her classic thumbs down, disapproving of his plan, as she did all those years before. Just to lock in that there was not and will not be a speck of development for her character. So Adam blows himself and the entire sector to smithereens, which is apparently something you can only do from the inside of the sector, but whatever. And it's not like we conveniently had the expert on killing these things standing right there doing nothing. And we're supposed to interpret this as heroic? Not only was it moronic, it was also pointless, cause guess what? There's still Metroids on the ship. In fact, there's a full-blown queen from 2!
Yeah, in fact, we get a boss coming back from each of the 4 mainline Metroid games at the time. Ridley from 1, the Queen Metroid from 2, Phantoon from 3 haunting the ship as a post-game surprise, and Nightmare from 4. Regardless of the execution, I think that's pretty cool, and I appreciate it. It's like getting a surprise gift you already own. It's nice and all, and you want to appreciate it, but you just kind of feel depressed even looking at it. Anyway, Samus faces off against the Queen Metroid alone to save the real Madeline Bergman, and for some reason I kept dying at the very end of this fight every single time, making me redo the entire thing. What happens is you finally freeze all the Metroids and beat down the Queen to activate a cutscene where you need to recognize that her mouth is a grapple point. Quickly use it and get swallowed by it, and even though they were never allowed by Adam and taught to you only once at the very beginning of the game and without
any prompts whatsoever, drop a power bomb in its belly to kill it. Now, what kind of game design is that? You spend the entire game being brainwashed into not using your upgrades, and when you finally need a crucial one you were explicitly told to never use, the game doesn't even drop a hint to do it as you're being boiled alive in the Queen's stomach. Were only players who beat the Game Boy game supposed to know that? So Samus saves Madeline Bergman and discovers that the imposter AI was intended to be used as the means to control the Metroids on the ship by replicating the symbiotic telepathic abilities of Mother Brain from Zebes. Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. Revealing the AI's true name as MB. Madeline Bergman, Mother Brain. Because we all needed that spelled out for us. And get this, since they weren't already laying down the motherly stereotypes thick enough, the reason MB lashed out and turned the bottle ship into a replica planet Zebes was because she felt betrayed by Madeline and the other scientists for wanting to alter her programming because she was developing a mother-daughter-like bond with Madeline. At this point, I'm not even gonna question the bonkers plot anymore. Are you sure you're still following us here? Anyway, it all culminates in what I can only describe as the most disappointing final boss in history. You watch as MB begins to command every living thing on the bottle ship to rain down hell around Samus, where you suddenly enter first-person mode, shoot her once, and the fight is over. That was seriously the final boss of a video game. You know, I guess they were trying to make it akin to the original Mother Brain fight, where it sits motionless taking punishment as it attacks you with the environment instead. In that sense, it's actually quite clever. The problem is, she goes down in one hit! And I don't mean some ultra-powered super missile or something. Literally one shot to the head and the fight stops dead in its tracks before it even begins. Okay, so then things start to get weird. Oh, excuse me, now it starts to get weird? The bottle ship is instantly swarmed by Federation Marines who immediately kill MB. Then their colonel, whom I can only describe as being the most punchable man in history, has a soldier escort Samus and Madeline back to her ship to be questioned and possibly taken into custody. But it turns out that the soldier taking them is Anthony, the random dude we don't remember who definitely had a tragic death sequence falling into a pit of lava before the Ridley fight. I guess they forgot about that too. And padding out the runtime, Samus blabbers on and on about MB not being evil because Madeline cared for her like a daughter and she was only learning to control her emotions and blah blah. People died! You know all those people you swore to protect, including your former commanding officer? All dead! Except for Anthony. I guess he knew the Konami code or something. Hold on, you're trying to tell me Madeline didn't keep a backup of her own AI she considered to be a daughter to her? She's an android. And that's not even the end of it. After the credits roll, Samus goes back to the bottle ship to retrieve Adam's helmet because for some reason she can't let go of her disturbingly strong electric complex for the douchebag. Oh, and by the way, she does this as the ship is about to self-destruct and without her power suit for absolutely no other reason other than fan service, and we haven't had a countdown sequence yet. You know, sometimes I do wish we got a Metroid movie, but then I remember Other M and realize, no, I freaking don't! Some of the most mundane blah I've ever heard. Not just the bland environment tracks, but the action ones as well. It sounds like generic background junk from a fair use library. The sound effects stink. They couldn't even get the traditional ones right, like what? Sorry, my daughter wrote that part. Or was I? Oh, couldn't even get the traditional ones right, like this became this. The best track by far is the Ridley theme, but that doesn't really count, does it? The rest are all cinematic background tracks for all the cutscenes. The problem is the voice acting. Samus in particular sounds indescribably bored with everything going on, and soaks in all the terrible melodramatic writing. To be fair, Samus's voice actress, Jessica Martin, was specifically told to speak in a droning, emotionless monologue. I used to think this was to emphasize the psychological damage Samus must have suffered through due to her reckless adventures. However, nowadays, I can't even find myself buying my own bullcrap anymore. She's written like a high school student trying to stretch their way to fit one paragraph of research onto a 10-page midterm exam. Don't blame the actors for a bad script. You're right, that's Sakamoto's fault. Poor delivery is the actor's fault. I feel displeasure at the inevitable acceptance of this game's disappointing interpretation of a historic silent protagonist. You feel sad! Shut up and get a move on. I can sell you on this game. There is no way you can sell anyone on this game. Just say 3 simple words. It's non-canon. It's a contraction. Doesn't that make it four? Hold on. Or does non-canon count as one word?
Say it!
But it wasn't even officially said anywhere by anyone. It's been alluded to, yes, but that's it.
It doesn't matter.
What?
It doesn't matter what they say, or even what they think. Metroid Other M is just a game. It can't hurt you unless you let it. Now say it.
It's non-canon.
It's non-canon.
It's non-canon.
It's non-canon!
Who cares? It's non-canon.
You see? It's gonna be okay! Metroid Other M is non-canon!
You're right. Denial is the first stage of depression.
No, for me, it's true. And that's all that matters. So if I ever fire that game up or even think about it, I know it's not a real Metroid game. It doesn't affect or relate to anything in the main canon anyway. And knowing that lets me sit back, accept it, and enjoy it.
Just like that?
All those years of stewing in anger and disappointment got you nowhere. Just step back and look at what this game eventually inspired. Not only is it in the past, but it actually taught us all a valuable lesson in game design, allowing us to get to where we are now. It's been long enough. Just let it go.
I forgive you, Other M. I admit I've been harsh to you over the years, but it's true. Without you, we'd probably never have gotten the triumphant return of the series like we did. Maybe we just needed to learn of every single bad lesson at once in order to find perfection. I feel a tremendous weight being lifted off my shoulders when I say, I forgive you, Metroid Other M! I forgive you! Wow, you were right. I do feel better, Bomb. I won't let this game hurt me anymore. Never again. Bomb? 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 Bomb?
And it was at that moment that I finally realized Bomb wasn't just gone, but he never existed at all. Was he simply a figment of my imagination, running wild like a child overdosing on Snickers and pixie sticks after Halloween? Or was he possibly a representational illusion stirred up by the deepest recesses of my aging mind, traumatized by my mother accusing me of devouring my own twin while I was still in the womb? No, he was neither, but also both. Bomb was me, a child in a man's body yearning for the chance to have fun again, to feel love, to feel—
Screw this crap! Whoa, what just happened? Shut up and review this dumpster fire, you don't want to know. The positive gamer in me went from having a great time with Metroid Other M to struggling to accept its many, many flaws, settling in a middle-of-the-road 5 out of 10. I genuinely did enjoy some aspects of this game, and it's admittedly a lot better on a second playthrough after 100%ing your first save file, where you're allowed to skip the cutscenes, but getting to that point just doesn't feel worth it. The critical gamer in me is obviously giving Metroid Other M 2 big thumbs down to go with its pitiful 2 out of 10. Ignoring the indescribable damage that this game caused to my favorite game franchise, it's one of the worst games I've ever played in general, with virtually no redeeming qualities. But what do you think? Let us know how your positive and critical sides rate Metroid Other M in the comments below. And that makes 100 episodes! Even though YouTube does everything in its power to quash my viewership, I appreciate each and every one of you that's been with us from Nier Automata to Metroid Other M. Because if you've seen this massive body of work and still don't think I care about you, then you're just playing with yourself. Thank you so much for joining me for 100 episodes. And remember to like and subscribe for more, and use the links in the description to nominate your own episode. Thank you to all of our amazing Patreon members, Aspen, Arrow, and Sid. Oh, you.